without it's fine, it's because of there you go. So yeah, Jazakallah, we're very, very fortunate to have him, and inshallah you'll benefit. I don't know how you want to do it, but if you wanted to manage the questions,
sure. If you have any guidelines you want to give, it's a half.
We have generally about half an hour, but you can take
sure.
the format of that as you will.
Okay, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallama ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I thank you all very, very much for your warm welcome. It's a great honor and pleasure for me to be here with you all this evening. The mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends upon these circles of knowledge and circles of seeking, and so I'm the beneficiary, in all honesty, of being here today. I just want to share a few words. Obviously we're in the run-up to thinking about preparing for Ramadan, and Ramadan is a month, as we all know, of fasting, praying, Quranic recital, feeding, and there's a number of activities we relate with Ramadan, but quite central to them is the act of sadaqah in the broadest meaning of this word. And there's a very important hadith narrated by Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, found in the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari. He says the Prophet ﷺ كان أجود الناس بالخير. He was the most generous of all people, but he was exceedingly so in Ramadan. And Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, he gave a reason for this. He says it's because it's in Ramadan when the Prophet ﷺ would review the Quran with Jibreel ﷺ. And so he says when Ramadan came and there was this extra Quranic review with the angel, then at that stage the Prophet ﷺ was more generous than the fast flowing wind. Like there's nothing could stop it, it spreads everywhere. And what you get from this hadith is that there's something about approaching the Quran and something about the spirit of giving. That the more we understand the Quran, it shows in our giving. That's all, from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And the reason why the Quran necessarily results in giving, it's because giving and care for the needy has been one of the most fundamental messages of the Quran right from the beginning. And it's really amazing. If you read the early Meccan surahs right as they came in the early stage of revelation, it's clear that Islam came with a big challenge to the society where it came. One was a challenge in what you call challenge in belief. Like, where do you get your knowledge from? How do you know that this is the truth? Devotion is only to one God. So it came with a very strong repeated challenge of what it means to believe in one God. And it came with another repeated challenge, is that you have to care for the needy. And if you don't care for the needy, you're going to go to hell. And I'm saying this quite black and white. The early Quran was extremely clear about this, right from the beginning of the revelation. So for example, Surah Al-Haqqa, which describes who are the baddies. خُذُوهُ فَغُلُّوهُ, take him, tie him. ثُمَّ الْجَحِيمَ صَلُّوهُ, put him into the hell. Why? إِنَّهُ كَانَ لَا يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ الْعَظِيمِ وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. He didn't believe in God the Tremendous, and he didn't urge people to feed the needy. فَلَيْسَ لَهُ الْيَوْمَ هَاهُنَا حَمِيمٌ. So there's no friend for him today now. And so the early revelation, and that's why who are the three people always in the early Quran? It's the yatim, and it's the miskin, and it's the Ibn Sabil. Ibn Sabil means traveler. And the idea of the traveler is the alien, the refugee. They've come from outside. They don't know anybody. All of these three have no one to stand for them. If you're not good to them, there's no one that's going to come after you, because they're nobody. They're in the corner. And that's why the Quran put them on center stage. If you believe in Allah, you have to find those who are needy. You have to find those, if you help them, there's no praise for you. That's what it means to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you don't, then there's nothing for you. Allah doesn't need you or anything else that you're doing. In Surah Al-Ma'un, the sign of disbelief in judgment is not caring for the orphan and the feeding of the needy. And so I'm trying to get at is, taking care of the needy is at the essence of what Islam was from day one. And that's why approaching the Quran necessarily leads to giving. But then the Prophet ﷺ, when he moved to Medina, a particular stage entered into the da'wah, which is building civilization now. And the civilization the Prophet ﷺ brought, he said, was bunya ala khamsin. It was constructed on 5 supports. And these are the 5 pillars: the shahada, the salat, the zakat, the fasting, and the hajj. And what I'd like to just share with you all is that these pillars, we think of them simply as pillars for ourselves, which they are. If I'm praying and I'm fasting and I'm giving zakat and I'm going on hajj, I will always stay connected. This is true. I'll have a fulfilled life, I'll have a wholesome routine and so on. But there's something else in these pillars that we all have to think about, is that these are the pillars of the Islamic civilization. These are the pillars, if we really see them as they deserve to be seen, they bring us together. And so if you look at each of them, salat is the greatest of them. Because what does salat lead to? It leads to building the mosque. And the mosque is the most powerful institution in Islam. Because the mosque is a piece of land that nobody can own. That's what a mosque is. If anyone says it's mine, then it's not a masjid. A mosque is the one that no one can say, this is mine. Rather, it belongs only to Allah. It's dedicated. And because it's dedicated to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everyone owns it. It's all of ours. I go to any mosque in this country and I feel like it's mine. I feel like I'm home. And so what the mosque does, it creates an ummah. When we build mosques here in England, 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe it was built by immigrant communities. They just wanted a place to pray for themselves. But what did they do for their children and their children? It reminded them that actually there's something in these walls that unite us, which is not just ethnicity or language or profession. What is it that unites us? It's this fact that we believe in Allah and His Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam. We're an ummah. We're one community of faith. The mosque creates community. The mosque creates identity. The mosque creates belonging. The mosque creates this sense that yes, we stand facing Allah, but when we end facing each other. We are together. The mosque brought us together. The zakat is the second of these. And the zakat is the one that I'd like to a little bit talk about. Because what the zakat does, if you look at zakat, I've told you from the beginning, Islam had this very strong importance it gives to charity. And in Mecca, the charity wasn't to Muslims. So the yatim was just the yatim, full stop. And that continues, of course. But the zakat is a more specific institution. It's not just charity now. It's doing something within these 5 pillars. The zakat only goes to Muslims. So the zakat is not just, here, you're in trouble, let me help you. The zakat is saying, me and you are one family. I have to look after you because we're one family. That's what the zakat is creating. Just like the prayer creates ummah, the zakat solidifies ummah. It's the fact that I have to look after you. If I don't look after you, I'm in trouble. And it's because we are one. And so that's why one of the rules of zakat is that the zakat is meant to be local. And so all of the schools of fiqh, the classical fiqh, they all emphasize that zakat is meant to be in the area where you live. They've debated, is it obligatory? Like, are you sinful if you send it out? Some say yes and some say no. But they've all agreed that the sunnah is here. So if you think about why is the sunnah of zakat where you live, because the zakat is creating an ummah where you live. That you have to develop this social knowledge. You have to understand who are the people struggling. Who are the aliens that have come new and they're lonely. And so what the zakat is saying is your neighbors in faith have a right on you. And you have to develop that relationship. And so the message of zakat, as we're approaching the holy month, is a message that we really have to think about. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want from us in this pillar? I'm going to backtrack a little bit again before I talk more about this community point of the zakat. So zakat means purification. That's what the word means. And also means growth. Why is it called purification? It's because as time passes over your money, a part of it no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the needy. If you don't give it to them, then you're eating somebody else's money. And your money is polluted. And you're feeding your children somebody else's money. And you're putting on clothes, it's not all yours. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the hadith says, Allah, Inna Allah tayyibun la yaqbalu illa الطيبة. Allah is pure and He only accepts what's pure. And so if you don't purify your wealth by getting the right of it out, you are not pure, your food is not. This is the idea. This is why it's called zakat. You have to purify yourself. And so as we're thinking about approaching the holy month, we have to make sure that we are pure, because it's the pure is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts. And so we have to start in this preparation then to look within the rights of people in our money. There's rights of family and children and relations, and there's the right of the needy, which is the zakat. So just in terms of simply preparing for Ramadan, one of the most, perhaps I would say the most important thing to think about is just start here. Have you given the right of people in your wealth? If your zakat is due and you haven't paid it, pay it. If you pay in Ramadan, make sure you prioritize it. Make sure you learn how do you pay zakat. I said zakat's a specific institution and it has rules. And as we learn the rules, they take us on a particular journey. They'll make us think about, because what the rules of zakat do, they make you take stock of what's mine, and have I lent somebody something, and should I make them aware of it? Do I owe somebody something? If money is mixed with family and spouses, we have to separate it once a year just so we're clear on what we own, so we can calculate. As we do that, it protects family feuds later on, because every year we're taking stock. The zakat will teach you many things about yourself, about your economics, about your society. So you have to start a journey of learning as well. Not a big journey, I'm not saying weeks of courses, but you have to make sure that you know how to pay zakat. And so the first thing I'd say is, as you're approaching Ramadan, learn about zakat. Enough that you know that you're paying it, and prioritize paying it. If it's already due, just pay it now. There's no virtue delaying something if the right has come now to help people in need, because they also want to have a Ramadan. We don't have to wait for our Ramadan and they get it at some other point. This is the first thing I wanted to say about the zakat. The second thing, what comes back to it is, I'm going to come back a little bit to this society. So I joined this National Zakat Foundation. I came from a background in researching and teaching in Islamic law. It was a very big jump to come into this, for coming from a classroom to now go into this management role of charity and fundraising and all of that stuff. It seems like a big jump in terms of the character and the daily job, but for me it wasn't a jump. It was the natural next step of what I was thinking about within the classroom, which is that all of Islamic law, all of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, it's teaching us how we can come together as an ummah, how we can live together fairly, because the Prophet said ﷺ, Yadullahi ma'al jama'a, Allah's hand is with the group. وَإِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ لَمَعَ الْوَاحِدِ وَهُوَ مِنَ الْإِثْنَيْنِ أَبْعَدِ. When one person is on their own, the devil is with that person. When there's two Muslims together, the devil is further away. And so why do we have these 5 pillars? Why do we have a mosque to bring us together and pray? Why not pray at home alone? Because the Prophet said, ﷺ, if you as a community understand that prayer is a thing you do together, you will keep the prayer. The shaitan is not able to break you. Why do we have a zakat that's local? It's so that people shouldn't want to leave Islam because no one's looking after them. People should want to come to Islam because it will look after them. Are you guys with me? Zakat, salat, this is the basis of da'wah. The da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ in Medina was this. He was building a civilization and he was calling people to it. And over the passage of time, when this civilization went to Iraq and Iran and all of these lands, over centuries they all converted. Because you all want to be looked after. You all want to find belonging. Not everyone is able to read books and fancy arguments. The da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ was for everybody. Look at the 5 pillars again. What's the first one? It's the shahada. What's the shahada? It means it's telling everybody that everyone is welcome. You just have to say 2 words and you will be in our mosque with us. Just say 2 words and we will look after you. And it'll be our duty to look after you. Say 2 words, break your bread with us. So the idea of the shahada, it's the key to this community, the community of the 5 pillars. And it's a very small key. And it's designed like that. So none of us will say to somebody, hey, you in the nightclub, why should I look after you? The 5 pillars are saying you can't say that. If he wants to come, you have to look after him. You can't judge them. If he wants to be in your masajid, it's his mosque just like it's yours. It doesn't matter where he was yesterday. And so the 5 pillars, can you get a sense? They're the essence of the da'wah. And our neglecting their full message is something we do to our own loss. And so when we're talking about passing on Islam to our children, let's think about passing on to them something which is so powerful that it will keep everything together for them. And so the message of zakat, in my imagination, or the way I see it, it's the next big message. We have the masajid, we have the schools, we have the lessons. But do we have a duty of care to each other? Do we have a brotherhood that's beyond lip service, which is actual service? And so the idea why I came to this project of local zakat, it's because localizing the zakat is forcing us to create real solidarity. So that people here, like I said, will know that if they have a need, they can come to the masjid and not just find a shoulder to stand next to, but they'll find someone to feed them as well. The masajid shouldn't be separate from support. National Zakat Foundation currently, we're serving a sort of, it's a nationwide project. So people apply online and we give them zakat through the post office. They get cash and they get bank transfer if they have a bank account. People ask, is there need in the UK? We live in a welfare state. And zakat is pushing us to think about that. Because what happens is, normally when people say that, they say that because they haven't really thought about it. You know, they're seeing things on the news, which is far away. They're not seeing the same thing here. And they think, oh, there's probably nothing there. But the zakat is telling you, well, look here first, because you have a right here. And as we start looking, we'll realize how many people are falling through the net here. How many people don't get the benefits, or the benefits aren't enough for them, or they can't pay for the heating, or they are going to the food banks. Look at our prison populations. They say 15 to 20% is from our people. Again, what's the zakat telling us? Those are our children. We failed them. That's what the zakat is saying. You have to look after them. Why did they go there if only 5% of us in the country are Muslim? It's because something is failing them. They went for money in all the wrong places. Why didn't we have the money for them in the right places? And so there is need in the UK. And we are failing our neighbors here. The zakat is saying, stand up to your responsibility. And so my advice to all of you is that we will have ties in various parts of the world. We're fundamentally an immigrant community. And the zakat respects keeping up family ties and all of the ties that we have. But my advice to all of you is think about what ties you have here now. Let that start building through zakat. Keep some of your zakat here. And let that force you to think now. Is there really a need? Is everyone on benefits? Well, what's the story here? Sometimes we don't feel a force of pressure to study that. And that's why I said zakat will take you on a journey. Let zakat take you. And so my advice to all of you is keep some of your zakat here. And let that make you think now. What really are the issues around us here and then in the wider community? My hope is going forwards, I described to you that the project, as I'm getting into it, it's a nationwide project. But the classical sunnah is not nationwide, but it's local. And so I'm trying to make relationships with mosques, teachers, centers, so we can start building real networks here. Because the truth of the matter is, the way the Holy Quran tells us, the people most worthy of our sadaqah are the people that don't ask for it. We have to find them. So the Quran has this very interesting message of dignity, where people are encouraged not to beg if they have what they need for the day, but those who have are told, well, you have to find them. Why did he have to beg? You should have stopped him before he had to beg. And so to do that, we need more of a local presence. And so my hope is that this is not my last time coming to see all of you or to come to Birmingham. My hope is I'm trying to establish relationships here to find ways that we can have networks of support all throughout this country, all throughout the region, so we can reach people. And there's more people in need than we actually think. And the Holy Quran, it gives a number of types of people you can give zakat to. And even on the most basic interpretation, what the Quran is saying is there's many people in need. It's not just the man on the street. There's people in their homes who are also in need. No one should have to struggle to wonder, am I going to pay my rent next month? We have to help all of them. And as we do that, that's the izz of Islam, where people can hold their head up high and say, I belong to something great, it looks after me. I'm so proud and happy that I'm a Muslim. That's how you keep people in. And that's why the pillars are the uphold of all of Islam. And that's what I'm just calling myself and all of you to. The last thing I'll say, and then I'm very happy to any comments, questions now, and if the time is up, I'm happy to continue a conversation here or outside or however you wish, really. I'm just here to speak to people, really, and just to share the message. Last thing I'll say is, please, like I said, take care of your own zakat. This is the first thing. The second thing is, because I want us to understand that everyone has to think about zakat. A lot of people, Muslims, don't pay zakat. They don't know why we should pay zakat. Why is it important? What does it do for us? And so we need to pass on this message because it's an important message. And no one can teach your family or reach them the way you can. And no one can reach your colleagues like you can. And no one can open up particular congregations like you can. And so if you have the ability to pass on the message, then that's the next thing you should do, after making sure right now that your zakat is straight. What I'm trying to do is I'd like to facilitate this conversation for people. And so I've made a little sort of landing page, if you like. It's called nzf.org.uk. That's our website, /zakat community. And over there, I'm trying to create like pre-recorded lessons, and also just a slide if you want to present to your family, and some notes and some FAQ and some little things you can share. It's not important right now, they give the money to this cause or that cause right now, but the idea is we have to start the conversation. One is that zakat is important and it's meaningful. It's not just a ritual, you just do it to get rid of it. And secondly, we have a duty to our communities. And so I'm just inviting you all to start this journey for yourself and help others start the journey. And like I said, I'd like to facilitate resources. And the current landing page, which I'm going to be preparing the resources for it, is nzf.org.uk/zakat community. And I hope to be able to keep up with you all and to start this journey with each of you. So all I wanted to say, Barakallahu feekum, jazakumullahu khairan. Sorry, it sounded like a bit like a Friday sermon, so I do apologize. But any time, any questions, any comment, I'm most happy to have this conversation with you all. Where are we? It's 5 minutes, is it?
Officially, but it's people are welcome to stay on if they wish, inshallah. I know there probably is people with questions.
Sure.
When we're discussing who we're going to distribute our zakat to within our family, we normally sort of work in the how urgent things are. 'Cause what's been happening in the world, and certainly in the last few years, there have been instances where we've had to focus a lot of our zakat to places outside this country.
Yep.
Going on what you're saying, is it advisable for us to seek local need first? Because a lot of the times the local need doesn't seem as dire as the need in other countries that you hear about in the news and on adverts within that. What are your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts is, first of all, there is an aspect of personal judgment, meaning as individual givers, what we feel is most pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that moment. There's an element of personal judgment here. And what I'm stressing is, us as a community, we have to take responsibility for our own. And that's what the sunnah of zakat is. So I think as a community, we need to develop our networks here. After that, if some of us, it's like, for example, if my brother's in trouble and there's somebody in greater need who I don't know, the Sharia says, well, your brother has a greater right on you because of brotherhood, right? So the sunnah of local zakat, all that it's saying is that your neighbor in faith has a particular right on you by virtue of being close to you. You shouldn't ignore that right of closeness. It's like the right of the neighbor. This is what it is. And that's why I'm saying, us as a community, we need to start that's what I said. Start a journey by at least keeping some here, and then some wherever in your heart you feel it's most pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that will start a journey for you. You'll start understanding more about what's happening here. Maybe you'll see there's more dye here than you might realize. Like at NZF, we've seen almost like a doubling of applications over the last few months. We have what we call a national cost of living crisis. Everyone is scared now with the energy bills and the food bills and the inflation, and there's a lot of families that are going to suffer. And so all I'll say is, that's why I said, if you start at least with some, it will show you something. And I'll leave it with that really. Naam Sayyidi.
I think it will help you and our brother here, this ayah in Surah Nisa. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم واعبدوا الله ولا تشركوا به شيئا وبالوالدين إحسانا وبذي القربى واليتامى والمساكين والجار ذي القربى والجار الجنب والصاحب بالجنب وابن السبيل وما ملكت أيمانكم إن الله لا يحب من كان مختالا فخورا. This ayah 36 in Surah Nisa, basically in English, the closest to it, and to worship Allah Azza wa Jalla, never associate a partner with Him, and be generous or good to your parents and the relatives, their qurba, your relatives, their kin, and orphans and needy, and then al-jar, your neighbor who is a relative, and the next one to him, the neighbor who is a Muslim but not relative, and the third one, a neighbor who is neither a Muslim nor relative, وَالصَّاحِبِ بِالْجَنْبِ, and the homeless. So subhanAllah, here the ayah is bring to you that yes, your family first, and then become your father, mother, and then your relatives, and then your neighbors.
That's beautiful. Barakallah feekum. It's very, very relevant. Sorry, I think that the sister here was next.
Yeah, I was saying that because you mentioned that you have done studies in Sabail Hanif. If there is someone who, if I know that he or she has money and he or she is not paying zakat the right way, like people have all kind of means to, hide their wealth. If they have not done it for a very long time, with salah there is like you can do the salah with everything. What is about zakat?
So the thing with zakat is zakat doesn't time out. So it's like if I owed you money and I promise you I'll give it back to you in 1 year, but I don't do it, in 5 years time I still owe you the same money. So in terms of the actual fiqh, the zakat doesn't end. So every year there's a new right, and it just adds up.
Really?
Yeah, because it's somebody else's money, and you just didn't pay it in this year, so you still owe it in the next year and the next year and the next year. So it just adds up. Now,
Plus inflation.
now what happens here is, for somebody who hasn't been paying zakat, it's like somebody who hasn't been praying.
Yeah.
You can't show up and say, oh, by the way, pray your 20 years and then we'll talk about today's prayer. You can't do it like that. We're dealing with human beings, and the important thing is the right of the moment. As for somebody who hasn't been paying zakat, what we have to do is start the conversation with them the way that I've suggested. Get them started, get them going, and so on. And yes, when they're ready, when they're settled, when they understand what the zakat is, then yes, we can let them know, actually, you have something to catch up and try to make it up. The way the fiqh says it is that you should put it into your will as well. That the zakat that's outstanding, you put it into your will, and then it's paid up to 1/3, because they consider it in the fiqh as a debt to Allah. So it's not the same as a human debt completely. Human debt, it eats all of your wealth before it comes to inheritance. But because the zakat is like a religious debt, it's considered a little bit less severe, and so it comes out of 1/3 of your inheritance, which is what you can give as charity. So zakat is like a charitable debt. But what they say is you should put it into your will, and then up to 1/3 of the estate can go towards the zakat if you place it as such.
Yeah, the thing is, when I ask him or her, the answer would be, oh, we do it the charity anyway, the year long. I'm sure you must hear the same. It doesn't have to be zakat. We help people anyway.
Yeah.
So do you think that kind of...
That's between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All that we should do is a little bit help them learn the very basics of it. Because zakat is actually designed to not be a burden. So it's not on all of your wealth. If you have many mansions, it's not on any of them. You have many cars, it's not on any of them. It's on a very specific type of wealth, which is what we call growing wealth, which is just the money, gold, silver, and things you bought to sell, trade stock. Zakat's only on 4 things. It's not on your homes, your houses, your land, your property. It's very, very simple. And so people need to understand, A, that it's not coming after you. It's really a straightforward thing. It's designed that way, so you'd want to pay it. And the other thing is, maybe a lot of what they're doing is all zakat anyway. They just need to understand that just you have to approach it purposefully. This is zakat. I'm doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then maybe what they're doing is perfectly good as well.
So if you have property, 4 or 5 houses, there's no zakat?
There's no zakat unless you bought it to sell it. See, zakat is not about coming after the rich. Zakat is not an anti-capitalist, anti-rich system. The way it works is simply this much. If you're rich, it's not about leveling. It's just about if you're rich, you have to know that you have to look after the poor. It's about responsibility. Zakat's about teaching responsibility. It's not about leveling. That why do you have 2 houses and he has none? Give him a house. It isn't like that. And why is it like that? Because everyone should partake in it. All of the pillars, like I said, they're the most fabulous system. If you really think about these pillars, all of their rules are designed to be easy, so that no one should have a reason not to take part. But if everyone takes part and you gather it together, it's a lot of money. And so that's like the secret of zakat. It's not coming after your homes, your cars, your collections. It's very, very simple. The wealth which is growing, which is just these 4 things in our economy. There's an animal zakat, there's a land zakat. But in our economy, it's just your money, gold, silver, with a bit of debate on jewelry, and your trade goods, things you bought to sell. That's it. And so it's simple, learn about it, it's not coming after you. But if we all did it, we would change things, guaranteed. Historically and now. Yeah.
You mentioned about capitalism, yeah?
Correct.
Actually encourage to develop economy, because President
Correct.
don't make your asset, zakat is your asset. So you have to make sure your asset is
Mhm.
liquid. Don't put on a illiquid stuff, because zakat will finish off in 40 years time.
So this is the idea.
Like
It's,
now to make
yeah.
sure you pay.
It's a whole system. If you start the journey, you'll realize it's a whole system. It encourages our economic activity, but it always reminds us we have to care for people. That's it. This is the message. Yeah, Tfaddal, go ahead.
Is it wrong to avoid zakat, to start buying a few houses just to avoid zakat? 'Cause I don't
Wow, that's an incredible question. No, it's not wrong, because of what the brother also said. At the end of the day, Islam encourages people to trade. Islam is, it's considered a very beautiful thing to go in the morning and earn a halal income. Working is good. Gathering money is good. It's just you have to take care of people's rights. If you put it into a house because you want to preserve the money and later on you look after your children, that's how people plan. They plan for their children. They have their own plans. There's nothing wrong in those plans. But when you don't put it into a house and it is money, then you have to realize some of it should go to the needy. Why is zakat only on these 4? Because these 4 are liquid. They're moving. You're adding to them. So all the rules of zakat, it's like a haircut. The thing which is moving, cut it off and you won't miss it because there's more coming. The thing which is fixed, don't cut it off. That's what the zakat is like. It's designed to be easy. Tfaddal.
So you might have already answered the question, but the thing is, it's really like nowadays you have investments in stocks and assets and equities and various other things, which you're never quite sure which way to categorize them.
Yeah.
But the problem is often they're very intangible. So if you own a company and that company is valued at whatever billion, you can't just kind of take that's very illiquid. But is that zakatable?
So the way that we advise it is as follows. It always has to come back to these 4, right? The money, gold, silver, and the trade goods, things you bought to sell. So when it comes to shares, if you bought them to sell them, then you're a trader. All of it is a zakatable asset because all of it with respect to you is just money. It's a share today and it's money tomorrow. It's very liquid. Zakat on the whole share if you bought it as a trader. If you bought it not as a trader, you want to own part of the company, get some dividend, put your money somewhere safe, etc. Then what we advise is as follows, is that you are a part owner of a company. That means you have a part ownership of its buildings, its factories, its desks, its computers, and its money, and its trade stock. So this company, Apple or whatever it is, some percentage of it will be zakatable assets, namely its money and its trade stock. And you are a part owner of that percentage. And so let's say, what we recommend is, if you want to do it really properly, we say go into the balance sheet and estimate what percentage of the company is zakatable assets, and that percentage of your share is zakatable. And if you don't want to do the hard work, then we have some muftis who've done some research into the FTSE 100 companies, and they recommend 25%. That if you bought the share not as a trader, but just as an owner, then approximately on average, 25% of its value will correspond to zakatable assets. So they recommend giving zakat on 25% of the value of your shares. But it still goes back to these four. It's not outside of the four. Every strange thing you might be owning, like crypto, like whatever it is really simple. If it works as money, it's zakatable, like Bitcoin. If it works not as money, like these new things people are buying and selling, but it's not money, then if you bought it as a trader, it's all a trade stock. If not, then nothing. If it has a zakatable in it, then that proportion. All goes back to four. Yeah, go ahead, man.
Is zakat applicable to kids or not?
That is a fabulous question.
What was the question?
Is zakat applicable to kids? And the answer is, they debated.
Really?
Yes. So some scholars, like Shafi'i, Maliki, Hanbali, these schools of law, they said it is on the wealth of kids. Because they felt it's like a tax. It's like every pool of money, the poor have a right on it. It's the right of the money. The Hanafi scholars felt no, you have to also remember that there's a worship in it. And children are not obliged to do worship until they're old enough to intend and so on. So for the Hanafi scholars, it's not on the wealth of children until they come of age, which is reaching puberty. So actually, both opinions exist. So maybe you can ask your dad which one he wants you to follow. Okay, good. Yeah.
So thanks. I think you partially preempted my question, but I'll ask it anyway. I know these four things. You mentioned jewelry.
Yeah. It's a debate. It's just like the children one.
Debate. It just.
Sure. So where does gold and silver come from in this list? Really, it's only on money, and trade goods are like money. So where did gold and silver come from? Is that for most of human history, gold and silver have been seen intrinsically as items that can function as money in society. That's why we love to give gold jewelry to women upon marriage, because the idea is if you struggle in the future, you have something valuable, you can liquidate and you can do something. So even the jewelry is still there with the sense that you can use it as money if you have to. That's why some scholars, and this is the Hanafi scholars, they said whether you wear the jewelry every day or not, there's something in principle that's money-like in the jewelry of gold and silver. So all gold and silver you have to give the zakat on. Not how much it costs as jewelry, like with the diamond and with all of that, but just as a piece of gold, how much is it worth? Other scholars, they looked at it like if you wear the jewelry all the time, it's more like fixed. You're not treating it like money, you're treating it like your clothing. And therefore you shouldn't have to then over time get rid of it or diminish from it. And so again, it's just like the children's zakat. Some felt all jewelry has zakat, and some felt no, if you wear it, then no, otherwise yes. This is the summary of it. تفضل سيدي. After the sheikh, I'll go to the lady in the corner. تفضل. You sure? I just want to give you the seniority of the majlis. تفضلي. Yeah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. We call them two words. It's probably, I haven't counted, probably 6 to 8. We call them kalimataini, two statements. Yeah, it's a good point. It's not 2 words. It's a bit more than 2 words. So one brother, تفضلوا. تفضلوا سيدي.
It's not a question, just stopping up thing. Like on what Abdullah said, that when you have money, you buy a house, you run away from zakat. It's actually, zakat is to benefit the community. So when you buy a house, somebody is going to rent the house, somebody is going to benefit. And you're investing that in the community. When you come to Hanafi, the Hanafi say you pay zakat on jewelry. The Shafi, Maliki, Hanbali, they say no, because they go to Aisha. But when Ramadan comes, most of our brothers here are Hanafi, Shafi.
One thing about the jewelry, just because some ladies, what happens is they have the gold and they don't have a lot of money. And then for them it's a burden, like how do I pay, I don't want to sell the jewelry. And so just to say one thing, which is there's no harm for somebody else to pay your zakat their money, as long as you've authorized it. You still have to intend it. It has to be on your behalf. It shouldn't be done behind your back, because it's still your worship. So the idea is, you know, the husband, that's what normally happens in these families. Like the husband will pay from the money the husband's earning, and the wife just keeps the gold alone, and they do that every year. And that's absolutely acceptable. It doesn't have to be from the wife's money, but the wife should know this is happening. So it's still her act, her intention, her contribution. If she doesn't know, then there's no intention and there's no involvement then. So that is the only side point.
And the third one I wanted to mention, the Prophet
Sallallahu Alaihi
استثمروا أموال اليتامى لا تأكلها الزكاة. That they invest the money of the orphan, so zakah will not eat it.
Correct, and that's also used by the scholars who say that the children's wealth has a zakat. So there's a brother here in the back.
Yeah, so I hadn't heard this opinion about the shares, so I wanted to just ask a bit more about that. So, because I think the 25% is very general.
Yeah, it's very general. So you can do a specific study. If you don't want to, then the general one is 25%. That we recommend.
But on a company on its balance sheet will have fixed assets and current assets. So the current assets are the liquid,
correct,
the stock, the cash, the debtors. So so that's one question, whether or not that would be.
Yeah, it's just what you're calling the current. It's what goes back to these four of the company's worth. That percentage of what the company is worth.
Because that's quite a simple thing to look at. It's not
exactly. Good. So people, exactly, but not everyone.
But they will still need to work at 20%.
The 25% is like the rule of thumb. So so if your shares are worth 100, then the rule of thumb is give zakat 25%. But if you want to do the actual homework, it might be less and it might be more. But for what we've seen is generally that's a fair rule of thumb.
You pay zakat on the 25.
25% of the value of your shares. So the idea is, because the shares represent fixed assets which have no zakat on them, and they represent liquid assets like money and the trade stock which has a zakat on it. So what?
25% zakat.
What we're saying is that this share
means 0.5%. Become 0.5%.
So fine. So it's 2.5% of 25% of the value of the share.
Because we have to be in reality, because every day changing, have to be involved.
Correct.
In terms of what his question was, when you own the company, because you are running the company, then 25 is fine. But for example, I'm a small trader, I'm just owing the 1% of the share, I bought it with cash, I can sell it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Those ones should be on full value, because
if you bought it to sell it.
Bought it.
If you didn't buy it to sell it, you bought it just you want to keep it, then it's not all a trade good. Then we say what percentage of the share corresponds to a zakatable asset. As the brother said, you can just look at the balance and realize 5% of the company is zakatable, 5% of the share is zakatable. What your intention was buying the share. This is what it goes back to. Naam, Sayyidi. Salam.
So just to make it less big class, but in NZF, when you get the applications, how you process them? How do you find out that they are actually the true needy, or maybe I just want to actually go and put in an application? So how do you do that?
So the way we do it at NZF, it's a tricky balance, because the point is, it is the right to have to feel interrogated before they can be supported. There's always going to be a balance, and all of zakat, even when you give your own zakat, it's always a balance. Or it's never within the fiqh. So I'll take it back to fiqh first of all. Within the fiqh, it's not meant to be 100% investigation. You count people's property in their home and look under their pillows. It's meant to be a guess based on some science, some kind of investigation which gives you a sense of what the person's situation is. If you feel most likely the person is worthy, then the zakat is valid, even if later on you realize that you was wrong. That's just in the fiqh, so that we understand. Sometimes we go so scared or cautious that there's people in front of us that we don't want to help them. We'd rather get someone who, and that's not right. We should be able to help people. Now the problem is, because we're working through the internet right now, like I said, I want to bring it to the grassroots, and I'm trying to work with communities going forwards. Then we follow a general method of caution that's gone throughout the industry now, Muslim and the government. So we look for the 3 bank balances, we look for the evidence of your benefits, we look for the sense of how many dependents you have, we look at what an approximate monthly expenditure should be. If you have a rent, then where's the rent contract? And so we do a sort of investigation. I believe it's a little bit not on the sunnah, personally, to investigate this much into a person's private expenditure, because it is still intrusive. and a person should have the right to ask for help without being so intruded upon. But at the same time, because we're doing it through the internet and we can't see the person, we don't know who it is, then that's the best that we can do to show that we've done some checking and we have some sense about how they're working. Or if we see a sign that they're transferring to another bank, we say, well, where's the other bank? You didn't give me that account. So we do look through it and we do our best to be diligent. But in my own heart of hearts, I don't think this is the sunnah. But to follow the sunnah, we have to come down to the grassroots so we can actually deal with a human relationship.
No, it wasn't. Maybe I just put the question on. I just wanted to know what's your process.
Yeah, so this is the idea. So they upstate. We look for these various points of documentation, and then based on that, then we award the support. Or we ask for further evidence. This is the essence of it. So this man has such wicked questions. Fadl, I'll start with him, then we'll go around. Yeah.
But, so if you're paying towards your remaining amount of money.
Yeah, so what happens is if you're paying now for like a school fees. So this is a good question. When it comes to things like fees and bills, what we generally say is that if the bill has already come to you, then now it's a debt that you owe. So the school has given you the invoice, or the electric bill has come, or the rent is due. This is a bill on you now, so you subtract it. You have to worry. You subtract it from your money and the zakat is on what's left. But if it's something in the future, like in September I'm going to have a school bill, then of course not, because we just extract all of our life's bills and never pay zakat. That's just how you do it then, in terms of the current thing. I've lost track of the order, but I'll go here now. So the way mortgages factor into this, again, it's tricky, right? We live in a very strange world, in a very strange in human history, where we are sort of enslaved in the system. And that's exactly what the Prophet ﷺ warned us of, but it's where we find ourselves. And he even said this was going to happen as well. So we just have to do our best now in terms of surviving. It's a very strange way of living, but all the rich people are in debt. And then all the poor people are the people who own assets, whatever they have. It's a very strange inversion of the state of affairs. So what we recommend is, if it's this long-term debt that you owe, the truth is, no one's going to come knocking on your door for year 3 of the mortgage today, because you have all these legal protections. It's going to come only in its installments. So what we then advise is, we say you can subtract, when you calculate do you owe zakat, you can subtract this year's worth of payments, but not the 25 years. And that's what we advise for all of these long-term loans, over the car and over whatever it might be. What's due this year, that's your zakat year, subtract it. What's due in the future, then no.
It's like non-current liability. It's not current.
Correct.
Longer than 1 year.
Correct.
Become non.
Yeah, so just that 1 year part of it, not like the whole thing. The other thing that we advise is that when you do the subtraction, I have this much money, let me subtract the money I owe, and then what's left is what I pay the zakat on. What we advise is you only subtract the principal of a mortgage payment, not the interest. Because the interest is something that you've sort of incurred.
Say that that's actually going to amount to quite a sizable
Correct. And the interest is something you've incurred and then you shouldn't have incurred, and that's not the same as a debt to a person, and the poor have a right. So don't subtract this other thing that you chose to go into. Just subtract the principal, which is what you own in truth. So that's how we advise to deal with a mortgage. So just to go to a new face first. Yeah, go. Salam.
Maybe to add to the strange world we live in. You mentioned something about gold that just caught my attention. So obviously you mentioned that previously it was the sort of asset where you can essentially sell and in this generation, a lot of us probably don't invest in gold as much. They may be in handbags or shoes or things that are luxury and actually sometimes much more valuable than gold and also go up in price. Is that the same principle for those items?
No, it's not, because those are fixed assets. And historically, traditionally, because this then every asset, every laptop and everything nice would fall into the category. And we fall into one thing, it's not coming after all of your assets. And so gold has a particular money-like quality. It's different from handbags. People buy handbags. Every handbag is like you can't sort of split it in half and pay off handbag for something. Whereas gold in principle, you can wait, you can help, you can buy. The gold has a money-like intrinsic. I think is when the gold is not backed by gold anymore. So think of this whole human arc of civilization. Gold has been a basis, and so there's this sense there's something intrinsic about gold that is being